reaction, because otherwise we wouldn't have this attendance. So we're very happy that we are increasing our membership. We're increasing the attendance to our meetings. Our membership that started last year with 5 residential buildings and only 1 commercial member is today 13 total. And 2 more have asked for membership, so we should be 15 members. When we started the year with only 6. We have, of course, a vision for the next 5 years and for the next 10 years for the neighborhood on how the neighborhood should transform to be even a better place to live in. But we want to concentrate now in the present and the immediate future. What things we need that are going to make our life better right now. And we want to mention that we are looking for more traffic control, especially on North Bayshore Drive. And of course on Biscayne, that everybody knows the problems that Biscayne has related to traffic, and especially safety. We need better public transportation, and we need not to forget that the neighborhood, our footprint, it doesn't go from Benicia Causeway to 21st Street, it goes to 39th Street. And we definitely want a more walkable neighborhood, and we don't want the authorities to forget that we are claiming for better infrastructure all the way to 39th Street. We don't want them to forget that the 30s are not as walkable as they should be, and they have been claims from the neighbors living in that area. And since we have had a great reception to everything that we have asked for, we expect the same about that too. Of course, we want more done in the Pace Park. We believe that we have some very good announcements to make today. We have had great response from the city. I think the city has done more for that park in the last 6 months than they have done in several years. Now, of course, I'm going to take the credit for Bna. Before there was no Bna, and now there is. But I had to thank you, Peter Borwick, the director of the CRA, and because I believe he's one of the most important persons in this, for this neighborhood. And the reason is not only because he listens, it's because he has the money. He has the bank account. The CRA has a budget that has been increasing, and he has not been holding that budget. He has been spending it, and he has listened to us. We know that the Bay Walk is something very important, but like a friend that lives in my building told me that we don't want to hear things that are coming in 10 years. We want to improve now. We want to know what's going to be done now. And you're going to hear some things that are going to be coming now. So we have a representative from the Downtown Development Authority. We have been trying to create closer communication with Brickell Association and the Downtown Association, and we have created that. Definitely has improved, and it will improve even more. So I want to mention also that we have someone from the Overtown neighborhood, Edward Prince. He is a community activist, and we welcome him too. And we should start with the meeting right now. We have first a very short presentation from Bna Clean that has sponsored this this meeting tonight, and I welcome you to the podium to do your presentation. All right, it's all yours. Thank you.
Well, good night everyone. My name is Jose Fidalgo. I'm the owner of Bna Clean. I'm partnered with my uncle who unfortunately couldn't make it tonight. And let me explain to you a little bit of what we do and how we do it. Bna Clean is pretty much a restoration company that was founded in 1994. And since our founding, we have established ourselves as a premium providers of essential services related with indoor air quality and in the residential, commercial, and governmental market. We expanded to the Miami area a little bit over a year ago, and the journey has been great so far. Our main services go from 24/7 hours emergency water damage restoration and drying. So in case you had a flood, we take all the water out and take care of your property, trying to save as much walls as possible. We do also mold inspection, mold remediation, mold removal, air duct cleaning, and dryer vent cleaning. I would say those four are our main services. And my commitment with our customers is providing a competitive price, making the residential and commercial buildings clean, safe, healthy, and more efficient. Personally, I consider myself a young, enthusiastic entrepreneur, and I'm who is eager to work, and I'm here to earn your trust. So thank you very much, and here's my colleague Ivan, who is going to tell you a little bit more.
All right, guys. Thank you to Andres and the board members for letting us be here. I hope that you guys enjoyed the food. Made sure that it was Spanish, knowing that we're in Miami, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that. One quick thing that makes us different from the competition is that we always have several trucks on the street that are ready to go. We have everything planned so that when you have an emergency, we can facilitate you with that. We have received really good feedback from some engineers and property managers that we work with, saying that our equipment makes a lot less noise, so while we're structurally drying everything, the residents are able to sleep. We're obviously fully licensed and insured, and one big difference also is that you get to deal with my boss Jose, or me personally, whenever there's an emergency. And another thing is we have partnered up with a public adjusting company, and John will explain to you about it, so we can deal directly with the insurance company, so you guys never have to pay out of pocket when it's a big job. So all you have to worry about is just calling us, and we take care of you and deal directly with the insurance company. And John?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here tonight. My name is John Hornbuckle. I'm a public insurance adjuster with United Claims Specialist. Probably most of you know what public adjusters do and already have a relationship, but in case you don't, just quickly, a public adjuster does the same thing that the insurance company adjuster does, but we do it on your behalf, on behalf of the insured, the homeowner, or the building, or the commercial building. So since the insurance company sends their adjuster, their interests are with the insurance company. You need someone on your side to look out for your interest, make sure you get the full amount that you really do on any claim. Just quickly, one of the things that sets us apart from other companies is we really stay on top of the insurance company, keep things moving along. It's like anything, if you don't keep after them, they'll sit on the corner of the desk. We make sure your claim keeps moving, and we keep you updated as to where your claim is in the process. The other thing is we're very aggressive about negotiating on your behalf. We make sure we get the fullest amount we possibly can on any claim you might have. And finally, again, there's no upfront fees to you folks. We only get paid like an attorney on a contingency fee basis, and we get paid when you get the money from the insurance company at the end. So thank you very much for having us, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. We'll be around back later on if you have any questions for any of us. Thanks very much.
I want to present now, the next segment is the Innovation Tower project that was in the agenda. Could you live near this billboard? And this is Michael Gongora. I don't think he needs too much of a presentation. We all know him. And partner of Bna Meeting.
Thank you, Andres, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking the time out to be here tonight. I serve as Michael Gongora. I serve as General Counsel for this group, Biscayne Neighborhood Association, as well as practicing Community Association law. I've been asked to speak tonight on Innovation Tower, which is an interesting topic for me because I actually used to serve on the commission in Miami Beach, where we don't allow any billboard advertising whatsoever, much less electronic billboard advertising. For those of you that have not read the articles or are not familiar with it, this is a 633-foot observation tower with electronic wall murals that would rise more than 60 stories high along 10th Street and Northwest 1st Avenue. It would be the first building of its sort. It would essentially serve to have up to 85,000 square feet of electronic billboard advertising that would be on 24/7 and would flash up to every 6 seconds. It is speculated that this will be seen from miles away, but it most certainly will be visible from both I-95 and 395 if approved. And it's moving forward pretty quickly. The developer, when he saw the agenda, Michael Simpkins, did phone me today to give me his views and ask that I also set forth his views this evening. So in fairness to him, I'll try to say some of the points he wanted me to get across. Those points are that this would be a big financial benefit for City of Miami because he is offering to pay the Overtown CRA $5 million up front for the right to have this billboard advertisements, and either $1 million per year in guaranteed minimum rent or 3% of the gross revenue that these collect, whichever is more. So you can imagine the amount of money that they anticipate will come in, and that he hopes to commence with this by June 2016. The problem with this particular tower, as I've spoken to members of the public, is that it's gone through with, quite frankly, very little public input. The first time the public really caught wind of this was in April at the Overtown CRA meeting, where they had deferred the item until June 29th. And I was speaking earlier with Peter Ehrlich from Scenic Miami. He's here somewhere. Peter, when I move on, because Watson Island is the topic du jour, if you have more questions, he probably knows even more than I do. But these are the 3 important dates to be aware of if you are opposed to this project. And many people are, including Peter's group and the Downtown Neighbors Alliance, a sister organization of Biscayne neighborhoods. Number 1, there is a meeting Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, of the City of Miami Planning and Zoning Advisory Board to consider certain planning and zoning changes for this item, so that it would essentially fall under another section of the code and they wouldn't have to go to the 2 public hearings and readings, and would essentially make this easier to get approved. Thereafter, on Thursday, the City of Miami Commission is meeting. They do their planning and zoning items in the afternoon. This is towards the end of the agenda, so it will probably be late afternoon. But they will consider at Thursday's commission meeting whatever the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board votes upon on Tuesday. And then the meeting that has gotten the most attention here is the meeting which is taking place on June 29th, the following week. That is the Overtown CRA meeting that was deferred from April. And in Miami, because this is different than Miami Beach, I've been learning. The City Commission serves as the CRA board. They are the same body, but they don't do it at a commission meeting at commission chambers, which you can watch on TV. They do it in a different building located in the specific CRA, and the meetings are not televised. So I suggest to all of you here, if you are opposed to this project, or if you are in favor of the project, if you want your views to be heard, it is moving full steam ahead. Again, you would want to consider going Tuesday to Planning and Zoning Advisory Board at 2 p.m. at City Hall, Thursday to the City Commission meeting in the late afternoon, and probably the one that's gotten the most attention, it's been in the Herald, is the one June 29th before the Overtown CRA. The concerns that have been expressed to me, and quite frankly, I haven't heard anybody other than the development team speak in favor, are traffic, distracted drivers on I-95 and 395, essentially dissipation or reduction in quality of life by having this. I will that it would give a Blade Runner feel to the city of Miami. I will tell you that the developer told me that the lights would be no brighter than the dancing lady on the other building downtown, but it would be the whole building as opposed to just the dancing lady. No matter what happens at these meetings, the project will eventually need administrative waivers, in the city of Miami called warrants. So there will be an opportunity for lawyers like me or others to get involved and to appeal the decision. However, the appeal will most likely go back to the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board or potentially the City Commission. So it's kind of the same groups that are going to hear this all along, and eventually, if people do not come into accord, it will end up in the courts. And in closing, because Andres asked me to be brief, I suggest if you want to learn more about this, there's two good articles in the Miami Herald, one that came out this week by David Smiley, who kind of says where this project is at and where it's moving forward, and an editorial that was written by Channel 10's Michael Putney a couple of months ago. And Michael Putney's views were that if the Innovation Tower is approved, it would rise to new levels of awfulness and visual pollution. So those are Michael Putney's words, not mine. I think that everybody needs to be aware, because as Michael Putney also said, although this is happening in Overtown, but on the border of downtown, the digital billboards will be seen from miles away and will impact all of us that live in the county, that drive by there, that travel I-95, and that travel 395. So this is a very important item, and I would encourage you all to get involved. And with that said, thank you very much for your attention.
Just as a little information about this, I went to a presentation by the developer yesterday, and Eduard was there too, you were there too, and my feeling was that there were a lot of unanswered questions, and it was mostly about traffic and about parking. And the project is not just this tower, it's 7 towers in a very reduced space. So we need more answers, I believe, before this is approved. The word should get to the commissioners before they approve this, that they are creating not such a small town, because they are anticipating 13,000 residents in those 7 towers, plus more than 1 million visitors a year just for the Innovation Tower. So the traffic problems are going to be huge. Of course, they ask for a study on traffic, but they want to approve this before the study of traffic is ready. So there are too many unanswered questions. Now, I want to introduce the next segment, which is Watson Island. Is that making traffic worse on the MacArthur Causeway? And we have Fernando Diaz. going to be the first speaker for a minute, and then 1 minute to the developer.
Thank you, Andres. Thank you, Sandy, for giving us the opportunity to be here this evening. Like he said, I'm Fernando Diaz, and I represent a coalition of concerned citizens and stakeholders who are very concerned about what's going to happen on Watson Island and how that project will increase traffic and decrease their quality of life. But I didn't want you to hear from me. I actually brought one of the stakeholders who's extremely concerned with the impact of this project, and this is Robert Goodman, and he represents Art Basel Miami Beach. And he'll talk on behalf of Art Basel and their concerns with the mega project development of Watson Island.
Thank you, Fernandez. Thank you, Andres. About 15 years ago, I became the Florida representative for Art Basel Miami Beach. I don't have to tell all of you what it's meant to our community of South Florida, and not only the cultural community, but all of us. It's changed the perception and our reputation of how we live, and it's burgeoning cultural mecca with the museums and other wonderful activities. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember a movie called Network, where the star stuck his head out the window and said, "I can't take it anymore." Remember, he screamed.
Man, just tell him I can't take it anymore.
That's not how I feel. How much more development? How many more projects? How many more commissioners are going to nod their heads and blindly give continual permits to projects that reduce our quality of life? I just heard former Commissioner Gongor speak about this unbelievable. I don't know who would wake up one day and say, why don't we put up a 600-foot tower of lights in Miami? And I also scratch my head when no more than 2 miles from where all you live in this wonderful neighborhood, and I live here my whole life, somebody would want to build a retail 4 times the size of a Walmart and an almost 700-room hotel and marina, and not care about how it's going to clog up the causeways and bring more and more to this area. It's wrong. You should tell your commissioner, whoever represents you, I believe it's Sara, it's wrong, and you should stand up for what's right and what's better for our community, for all of us and the future and our kids. Thank you.
The bodyguard comes with it.
All right. We have Brian May. He's the spokesperson for Flagstone, which is the developer of the Watson Island project.
Thank you, Andres, and thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. My name is Brian May, and I represent Flagstone Development Group, who is the developer of Island Gardens at Watson Island. I appreciate the concerns I think that you just heard. While they're rather general and not very specific, there's one sort of small distinction between, say, the Innovation Tower that you were just spoken about and Flagstone and Island Gardens. And that is that there's no moral approvals to be had for Island Gardens at Watson Island. Those approvals are done. The project is approved. Just to give you a brief history, in 2001, the project was put out as an RFP, a competitive process that three developers came in and bid on. One of them, my client, actually happened to win the bid. Later on in 2001, the project was approved by the voters of Miami by 68%. Since then, in 2005, we secured all the marina approvals, all the upland approvals, went through dozens of public hearings. We had a fallout, as we all know, called the Great Recession in 2008, and the project stalled and stopped. In 2010, we were required to go to the city and renegotiate our agreement with them, and we did that. And as a result of that agreement, since 2010, we paid the city over $3.5 million in rent. So while I understand the concerns about traffic and whatnot, and I understand the concern about Watson Island, I think we should ask ourselves a much bigger question, which is not what are we doing to stop development, but what are we doing to address transportation needs? So I would say to you, while people may ask you to rise up and stop this development, I would tell you that that ship has set sail a long time ago. And the folks here in the coalition are behind a lawsuit. They sued in 2005. It was settled and dismissed. In 2014, they sued again. They tried 3 different complaints. It's been thrown out of court and it's on appeal. So I would tell you, if you want to contribute, go ahead. I would tell you it's probably a waste of your money and a waste of your time. Thank you.
We have 5 minutes now with Sam Levin, the attorney for the coalition.
Good evening, I'm Sam Dobbins. I am the attorney for the Coalition Against Causeway Chaos. I'm also the attorney representing several City of Miami and Miami Beach residents who have indeed filed a lawsuit against the City of Miami over the illegality of the Flagstone project. Now, I have 7 minutes to speak and then Brian gets to come back. So I would like to, Brian talked about the lack of specifics, so let's talk about some specifics of this project. What was approved in 2001 in an election would have a mega yacht marina, 2 hotels, 53 and 37 stories high, and 225,000 square feet of retail and commercial space, along with a 10-story parking garage. Now that's the equivalent of about over 2.5 Walmarts on Watson Island with 1 road in and 1 road out. It was approved in 2001 by the electorate, and it was based upon a traffic study that was done in 2004, and it was based upon appraisals that were done in 2002. Now, the 10 years that elapsed without the developer raising the money for that project, there was a recession in that time period, but there were several years when there was no recession, no economic impediment, and the developer could not raise the money to do that project. And the reason is because it's a terrible project. It's the market, the private markets did not buy into it. So when Brian says that that the client was required to go back to the city commission in 2010, the reason it was required to do that was the developer was in default. It had not met its construction deadlines, and it had not paid the money that it was obligated to pay the city. And in order to get around those defaults, they went back to the commission. So when the developer says that the project was approved, it was renegotiated in 2010 in ways that deviated from that big referendum that they're throwing out at you as being their basis for approval. Instead of having to build that project at once and start producing the massive amounts of taxes and revenues that the developer promised at the time, the city allowed the developer to build in phases. That means that at the option of the developer, they could build the marina, then the parking, and then the retail. So when the referendum said that the city would get a minimum of $2 million a year, that promise was wiped out in 2010 when the city renegotiated that. So they deviated from the referendum. That's a violation of the city charter. The charter requires when that public land is leased for private use that it has to be approved by a referendum. But when the city deviated from what was approved by the voters, that negated the legality of the new agreement that was reached in 2010, 2011, 2012. Now, we all know that things have changed around here and on Miami Beach between 2001 and 2014. The residential population has more than doubled, and so has the commercial activity, the business activity in downtown Miami and on Miami Beach. So the 2004 traffic study has no validity whatsoever in 2014, and yet that's what the city has been relying on, and the developer has been relying on over and over and over again. Now, do you believe that a traffic study in 2004 would meet the requirements for your quality of life in 2014? Does anyone here think a 2004 study would be valid in that respect? Back to the project then on this area. And the new 2013 traffic study, which the city never produced until there was a lawsuit, did not measure the impact of that project here on Biscayne Boulevard, or on Alton Road, or 5th Street, or any of the other, or West Avenue. So none of those impacts have been calculated. And we have professional studies here that show that the 2013 traffic study does not meet professional standards. So what the city of Miami did, without taking into consideration the impact of this project on your quality of life, is just give the developer more time, more flexibility, and allow them to deviate from what the people approved in 2001. Now, the other major consideration that you need to take into account here is that that $2 million so-called minimum rent that was approved based upon a 2002 appraisal, the city was required to conduct new appraisals by the state of Florida, which they did in 2014. The appraisers told the city that the fair market rent for this project is no longer $2 million, it's $7.2 million. And yet, that information was either given to the commissioners who refused to admit it during the commission meeting where that was approved, or it was withheld from the commissioners. We don't know that yet. There is a lawsuit over that where those facts are going to come out. But it violates the charter of the city of Miami for the city commission to approve a lease of public land for less than fair market value. And they had information in their hands, and I can give you the memo here to anyone who wants it, which they withheld until my client sued the city for the public records. They had information in their hands that said the value, fair market rent has gone from $2 million to $7.2 million. So the city patently violated its charter when it reapproved that project in 2013 and 2014. So you, the citizens, are going to be subsidizing the Flagstone project to the tune of a minimum of $5 million a year at the start once that gets started. And that's going to escalate over time. So if you think that it's in the public interest, in your interest, to have to you personally subsidize a private developer to utilize the most valuable public green space on the waterfront in the city of Miami for the same kind of private development the private developers have been doing on both sides of the bay with their own money, that you should be subsidizing that. That's what you need to think about next time you go to a public forum where there's a city commissioner from the city of Miami. One more point that Mr. May did not address, which is that it isn't all approved. The developer has pending before the city right now an application to increase the commercial and retail space by 140,000 square feet, from 225,000 already to 390,000 square feet of retail and commercial space. That has not been approved. And the records we were able to get in the lawsuit show that the city staff was prepared to let that increase go through without public hearings, without a new traffic study, all in violation of the city code. Now, when it became obvious that there was scrutiny on that, so far they've walked back from that. But all eyes are on what the city staff is going to do with that 140,000 square feet, because if they do what they're supposed to do and have a new traffic study and have public hearings, that should come back before the city commission. So you need to contact your commissioners, and you need to attend every city commission campaign event and ask the candidates, where do you stand on the Watson Island project, both as it stands now, which is in legal trouble, or if it comes back to the commission, would you vote to reapprove it or to approve the additional 140,000 square feet? On the legal issues, let me be clear. The courts have said that the citizens do not have legal standing to make these charter violations, to raise these charter violations in court. That is a departure from 70 years of precedent in the Florida Supreme Court and the 3rd District Court of Appeal. And yes, it's on appeal, and there are other very prominent citizens in addition to my clients who have been aggrieved by the fact that the courts are somehow restricting your access to go to the court to tell the city that they have to follow their own charter. That's your charter. You voted that charter in, and that charter says you can't lease public land for less than fair market value. So you don't have the ability right now to go to court. Hopefully we'll get that in the appeal, but you do have the ability to get active politically to make sure that those people who have your interest at heart follow the charter.
be a little briefer. Do I have 7 minutes or 15?
Yeah, 20 minutes.
Let me just answer a couple of things that Mr. Dubin put out there. The first of which is, if much of what he had to say here was a real basis for a lawsuit against the project, then his lawsuits wouldn't be getting thrown out of court. That's number one. Number two, when he says to you that the city is not charging fair market value, and in 2014 they failed to push fair market value on the developer, he fails to tell you a couple things. The $2 million he mentions to you is minimum annual guaranteed rent. In addition to that, Flagstone has to pay to the city percentage rent. Of every dollar that flows through the project, the city gets a percentage off of the top. So in addition to the $2 million, when you add up the percentage rent between the hotels, retail, and the first ever mega yacht facility in North America, it easily gets to $7 million. The city understands that, the city commission understands that, my client understands that, and frankly, I think Mr. Dubin understands that as well. He just fails to leave certain things out of his argument. The second thing I would tell you is that we could talk about the traffic studies all day long. There was a traffic study, yes, that was done in 2004. We updated our traffic studies in 2010. We also updated our traffic studies in 2014. Mr. Dubin has gotten the city of Miami Beach to go and order a traffic study of how it would impact the city of Miami Beach. We welcome all of that. I can tell you every traffic study that we've conducted, every traffic study that the city has seen, clearly states that the level of service on Biscayne Boulevard, on 395, on Alton Road, on 5th Street, all of it is no worse than it is today by virtue of our project. By virtue of our project. Now, if people want to do something to cure the issues of transportation, then focus on transportation and transportation improvements. If the city of Miami Beach is worried about getting on and off of Miami Beach, then maybe they should look at the connection between 395 and Miami Beach, and they ought to redo it. Maybe they ought to not have a traffic light sitting there at the end of a major thoroughfare before you get onto Miami Beach. But don't blame that on boogeyman politics on one project on Watson Island, because that's not fair, and frankly, it's not right. There's plenty of public input. One closing comment that I would tell you. When Mr. Dubin speaks about fair market value, in 2010, we were in the throes of the Great Recession. And at that time, no one from the city wanted to talk about fair market value of the property. No one from the public wanted to talk about fair market value of the property. No one wanted an appraisal on the property. We would have loved an appraisal on the property in 2010 because our minimum annual guaranteed rent would have gone down because the value of the property would have never panned out to what it was in 2014. So I will say to you, again, this project should not be treated as if it hasn't been approved. It has been approved. Any modification to the plans will not be anything significant that would draw any kind of need for public hearings, for going through a whole new zoning and planning process. My client would never want to do that. And I will leave you with this. My client is about to go on the hook for upwards of $700 million in an investment on Watson Island. Do you think in your right mind that he would want to have poor traffic conditions, not proper ingress and egress onto Watson Island? Do you think that he would want to constrict his own project that is investing all of his own money and going on the line to pay off debt over a very long period of time? The answer is he'd be foolish to do that. If we did traffic studies and they came back and said, look, you have to rebuild something on 395, he'd have to take that into consideration in his right mind. The reason he doesn't is because none of the traffic studies that have been conducted say that. And I don't think they will. So with that, I wish you all a very good night. If anybody has any questions, I'm here personally. I'll be happy to answer any questions personally or otherwise. Thank you.
You know what's amazing? Sounds like kids are
Yes, we're going to take a few minutes for questions. So if anyone has any questions, but to either side, now is the time.
I have a question. So Brian, you said that taking the $2 million, that with the percentage payments that your client's going to make, that would raise it to $7 million, thereby meeting the obligations that Sam has raised about the additional money that the property has increased in value.
Correct.
But you're still short $5 million.
Actually, you're not, Al. And if you look at historically at any leases that are with the city on any kind of public land, the minimum annual guaranteed rent is the minimum annual guaranteed rent. So as any project that's built, especially of size or significance, doesn't immediately stabilize. It takes 4, 5, 6 years for a project to fill up its leasing, for the hotels to get out there in the marketplace and be mature, for the retail mature, for the mega yacht facility to mature. But you start somewhere.
Right.
So each lease has a minimum annual guaranteed portion. And on top of that, you've got to pay, I believe ours is 2%, 2 to 3% of every dollar that flows through that project goes to the city.
But
There's nothing wrong with that. That gives the developer time to stabilize this project. But as the project grows, 10 years from now, this project's making $10 million a year, $11 million a year, much more than $7 million a year. So it works both ways. Before the project gets stabilized, it's got to have time to get stabilized. And after it gets stabilized and matures, it throws off really significant dollars to the city.
But doesn't it start with the $2 million? They get $2 million regardless, right?
Yeah, no matter what.
So if this had been rearranged, they would have got $5 or $7 million regardless.
They had no right in 2014 to renegotiate the lease payments with us. All that the city approved in 2014 was a waiver of deed restriction that was passed by the Florida cabinet to allow us to use the property. That is a fact. No one went back and discussed or renegotiated any terms because none of them were on the table. That was done in 2010. And as I explained, no one from the city wanted to renegotiate terms in 2010 because they all knew that the value of the property was in the dirt. Their comps were terrible. People were fire selling properties downtown, on the beach, everywhere. The economy was in a recession. That would have inured to our benefit. We would have paid less minimum rent had they gone out and done that.
But you're talking about public property, and the benefit's supposed to go to the public, to the taxpayers. So you're right. In 2010, it would have benefited to you. But in 2014, it would have benefited to the taxpayers. And since it's the taxpayers that own the property, not your clients, the taxpayers own that property. That's public land.
Of course.
So they're supposed to be the primary beneficiary of public land, not your clients. So if you had paid the $7 million, if you were required to pay the $7 million, all that additional profit that you talk about in payments and whatever would have still increased the amount of money that all of these people would have seen a benefit from. So because that's what's really at stake here, is the benefit to all of these people.
Listen, this project will be one of the greatest projects in terms of benefits to the city that the city's ever seen.
What's the tax?
It's the first. In the first 5 years alone, we pay over $98 million in sales tax to the state. Some of that comes back to the city.
Real estate tax.
Real estate taxes we pay as well. I mean, this is not like we're not paying our fair share.
No,
That's
not
just
arguing
absurd.
that. Not arguing that.
Sure.
What do you think is a better deal for the developer? If the minimum rent was $7 million for perpetuity, or if it's the $2 million base plus the percentage over?
We would take $7 million in perpetuity. If we had to do that, we would take $7 million. Because in year 15, we'll be paying $15 million, $16 million. It just keeps ticking up. And it has an escalator on the base. The minimum rent goes from 2 to plus 3%, plus 3%. It just comes pounding over time. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for Mr. Devins.
Sure.
Yes, can you explain the size that was approved and then voted by the city? I don't really understand that, and then what we're showing now. It seems to be a little bit larger and bigger, and I really didn't quite understand how all that came to be.
2004, the city approved what they call a major use special permit for 2 hotels, 535 and 375 feet, with 605 rooms. In 2004, after the referendum, the formal approval gave approval for 2 seconds. The $2 million, you can ask Mr. May when the last time the developer paid the city the $2 million minimum annual guaranteed rent.
When?
Never. Never. Because that rent doesn't apply until they finish the project. And when they got the right to develop in phases, that means that the ability to complete the project is completely in the hands of the developer. So the $2 million could well never happen, and that's in the developer's hands. And the question you raised is not either or. The 1% travels with the $7.2 million as well. So it's a complete falsity to say that the 7.2 million is apples to apples. It's 2 million plus the 1%, or 7.2 million plus the 1%. So that money is coming out of your pockets, the subsidy to the developer, that the city did not force them to pay when it allowed this project in 2014 to go forward for less than fair market rent.
Let me just clarify that for everybody. When we renegotiated the agreement to enter into the ground lease with the city in 2010, the city for the first time required us to pay rent before we started construction. So before we could put one shovel in the ground, before we could go to the state and get a deed waiver, before we could do any of that, okay, and your commissioner's here, and frankly, he's the one who drove that deal and made the developer do that. Before we could do any of that, we had to start by paying the city on an annual basis $540,000 for the first year, $750,000, I believe, in the second year, and close to $1 million in the third year. Before we put a shovel in the ground, at the end of the third year, we began paying the city $1 million a year in construction rent. During construction, we are required to pay the city $1 million. That has been a part of the lease and the agreement to enter since 2001. The notion that we have changed that, the notion that we haven't complied with the referendum in that regard, is simply not true. And when we finish, I believe, the first 2 components, we pay the city $2 million. If we do not build the hotels, we pay the city a minimum rent of $2 million a year. That's fact.
Your question is to...
Yes, to vote. I think it's skeptical between the relationship between the developers and the commissioners. The history of Miami is replete with things that were promised and the delivery failed. From the arena to very recent projects. The Marlin Stadium is the mecca of miscalculation and double talk. You have been talking about a study that was done in 2001. I think it is relevant to revisit that. Things have changed a lot. I came to Miami 16 years ago. Going to Miami Beach was a breeze. Now it's chaos. I go to Watson Island on my bicycle, it's a mess. From jungle, parrot jungle, whatever it is, to the museum and that awful neon thing that it's an eyesore to everyone. To now they have built a floating beach with inflatable things. You have been talking about dollars, and $2 million today is probably equal to 500,000 years ago. What is your position on this environment? I have seen in the last 15 years, Biscayne Bay deteriorate, becoming as stale as Aventura. The beauty that we have is vanishing because of buildings and people like you.
1 minute.
Yeah, listen, I mean, if you have those concerns, then you should talk to regulatory agencies. But I will tell you that this project, I can't speak for others, it took us 2.5 years to get a marine permit for this project. We went through every conceivable local, state, and federal environmental agency, and it was not an easy process. And we have performed everything that has been required to touch the bay. And, you know, to dredge the bay is a major undertaking. And I think you know that because you live close and you see it every day. Yes, it's a concern, but don't blame the developer. The developer is only following the rules that are set out for him. If he follows those rules, you can't blame him. If you want to blame the agencies or you want to blame environmental regulation, I'm with you. But that's not his fault. He's following the rules and jumping through the hoops. And then everybody's saying he did something wrong. I mean, this guy's done everything that he's been asked to do. Everything.
Sam is going to answer that?
Mr. May said that the $1 million construction rent requirement has been there since 2001. I have the official ledger here that we had to sue the city to get. Between February 2001 and September 30th, 2010, Flagstone paid the city of Miami a total of $200,000. The $1 million came in 2010, not, because the city was, kicking ass and taking names. The developer was in default and the city was ready to throw them off the property. They occupied that beautiful potential public land rent-free for 10 years.
All I'm saying to you folks about the rent, and enough about the dollars and cents, is that the agreement since 2001 was that the developer did not have to pay the city rent until they started construction. In 2010, the city said to us very clearly, you want to continue forward, you have to start paying rent. Whether you start construction in the recession or you don't, you must pay rent. We started paying rent. But in 2001 to 2010, the reason we didn't pay $1 million or any dollars to the city during that time is because we weren't required to, which gets back to my main point. Everything the developer has been required to do, he has done.
Yeah, but you just said you did it, you done what you did.
I'm sorry?
Change your story.
No, I'm not changing the story.
I'd like to ask you.
All right, there's going to be one more question only, and 1 minute from each
Can I ask you a question, everybody here? For the last 10 years, if the economy has not gone to as well as we would all like, raise the hand of anybody here that stopped paying their mortgage payment, their rent, their car payments. But in the city of Miami, here's your land for 10 years. You signed to pay us $2 million a year, but you don't have to because things didn't go well. This is a bad project, and we should fight against it with our very last breath. This is bad for Miami.
All right, we have 2 more questions. Very brief.
My concern is, again, we're talking a lot about the tax income that's going to be coming in, but I want to go back to the quality of life. I'm a Miamian for the last 40 years. The original contract, you said, was done many years ago and that there's not that much of a difference, but it sounds to me that the upcoming meeting is about making twice the amount of commercial. And then nobody's talked about the Port of Miami and the mega ships that are going to be bringing in these it spreads out of all of the containers that can be put across from here to Boca or something crazy like that. So already I feel when I'm coming through the trucks from the new port or from the new tunnel, and we still haven't even seen the mega ships that are coming next year. So that's something that also it's the quality of life. Everyone's talking about money, money, money. Quality of life also counts here.
Can you include your question in that, or is it totally different? Because we have only 1 more minute for each one to answer.
I'm just curious about the type of retail, because I already feel that Miami has so much retail and so much retail is coming online between World Center, Brickell City Center, and so how will your retail stand out against all the other projects that are coming online and leases?
Billionaire retail.
All right. You want to answer both questions?
I'm not really authorized to give any details on that. All I can tell you is that anchor tenants are being negotiated as we speak. I think that you will find that the retail there is going to be much different than what you have here today. Whether it's Brickell City Center or whether it's Miami World Center, it's going to be more worldly. I guess that's the right word. And there should be some announcements on that coming in the fall. So.
Just to go back to one point that was previously made, Mr. May said that if the legal arguments that my clients had merit, they wouldn't have been dismissed. The cases were dismissed for lack of standing. That means that the court said that you as a citizen don't have the right to come in here and say that the city violated the charter. But no court has said that it was proper for the city in 2010 to lease that land to Flagstone for less than fair market rent, or 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014. No court has said it was okay to deviate from the referendum by which it was originally approved. No court has said it was proper for Flagstone to switch what it promised it would do in 2001 to what the city then let it do in 2010. No court has said that it was okay for the city to require Flagstone to commence construction by June 2nd, 2014, and they didn't turn a spade. They didn't have a marina permit prior to June 2nd, 2014. They failed to meet that deadline. No court has said any of those things are okay. The merits remain to be contested, and the standing issue will be addressed in the courts.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to belabor all the points which we've talked about ad infinitum. But let me just say this. Mr. Dubin is here with the coalition because they want to get you people excited about this, and they want you to help pay for their lawsuit. And their lawsuit, I'm going to remind you, going back to 2004, 2005, was nothing about the illegalities of the project. This lawsuit is about one thing. The main plaintiff, Mr. Stephen Herberts, lives at 1000 Venetian, and when those towers go up, they're going to block his view of downtown Miami. That's what this is really all about, and that's all I have to say.
That's a good enough reason right there. That's a good reason to sue.
He can answer that.
I live in the town. That's good too.
He can answer that too. I live in Coral Gables.
You should all, I invite you to go to the website of the Coalition Against Causeway Chaos. It's very thorough, it's very comprehensive. The data that I've discussed here, it's all there. You'll find it very thorough and very informative. And believe me, to take on the city requires a lot of resources for a lot of things, including information resources like the website, experts. Believe me, this is a very expensive undertaking. The city has spent, I've seen the public records, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars they've earmarked for fighting you, the citizen, from holding the city accountable to follow its own charter. So you decide which side you're on.
Citizens United is
All right. We're having a great show today. The next segment is the current conditions of homeless conditions in Miami and the Bna area. And for that we have someone from the Downtown Development Authority that is going to give you a couple of minutes presentation.
Hi, good afternoon. Good evening. Maybe we can all take a breath of fresh air after that one. Hopefully this issue isn't quite as much as the debate. My name is Sherry Blanton. I'm a senior aide to Commissioner Mark Sarnoff. I'm also a resident of the Grand and a member of Trinity Cathedral. So welcome to Trinity, first and foremost. But today I'm here on the issue of downtown homelessness and chronic homelessness. If you've been following in the news recently, the City of Miami has launched a very innovative project called the Shelter Program, which Officer Burnett probably briefs you on the details of regularly. That program is up for funding renewal to the tune of about $700,000. The Miami-Dade Homeless Trust is funded based on your food and beverage tax dollars. It has an annual budget of $57 million. All we are asking for the Miami-Dade Homeless Trust is to consider funding the shelter program, which deals with chronic homelessness. These people are the hardest of the hard. They live on the streets of downtown. If you've been down there lately, they're in every nook and cranny. It's really not humane for these people to continue to live like that. And we're partnering with Camilla's House to offer them a place to sleep. And we're advocating to all of our county commissioners to please support this program. On Tuesday, June 30th, is an opportunity to do that. I have some flyers here. We have the hashtag #ShelterNow. If you're not able to attend the county commission meeting, please see the DDA's Facebook page, see Commissioner Sarnoff's Facebook page. You'll find more information. But we're all in this fight to end downtown chronic homelessness.
Thank you.
Where did the 57,057?
We're going to take questions after the end of the
Where
presentation.
did it go? Why do these people have no shelters? They're bathing in the bed.
We're not taking more questions until the end of the segment.
Yeah, part of it is for the Housing First program, which the county proposes. However, the chronic homeless need to be dealt with in a much different and more immediate sense. There are people who want to get off the streets today, and there's a huge waiting list for the chronically homeless.
I know all about it. I just don't know where the 57 million.
Well, those are good questions that you should ask the county commission. At the end of the day, they are accountable for the $57 million homeless trust budget. So thank you for your interest.
We have now Officer Burnett, that is the coordinator for the Chief of Police.
Good evening. I'm Executive Assistant James Burnett, Homeless Coordinator for the Miami Police Department. On behalf of Chief Yanis, thank you for having me come out today. I'd like to recognize Commander Afonso. He's the new commander for the downtown area. As you all saw, I'd like to recognize Commissioner Mark Sarnoff. Lieutenant Guerra in the back, and the Neighborhood Resource Officer Galvez from downtown Miami. In the last segment, there was questions and concern about quality of life, and I hear that quality of life is very important to everyone. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. As Sherry Blaine, the aide to Commissioner Sarnoff, stated, if the program is not refunded, it's going to affect quality of life of every individual in the city of Miami. The reason why I say that, because some of you are familiar with the Pottinger Agreement, and having shelter on a daily basis allows police officers to engage and encounter homeless, whether it's a complaint, whether it's dealing with a homeless person with a disability, with a medical condition. Without the shelter availability, police officers will not be able to take any police action. And when I mean by police action, everyone thinks it's an arrest. It's also a warning. So if a call comes out, like Margaret Pace Park, I know it's very important to everyone in this here, correct? And if someone calls on a complaint at 2 o'clock in the morning of a homeless person who's in the park, and he's violating what they consider a life conduct misdemeanor under the Pottinger Agreement, and this program goes away, as you heard previously, there is a 200-person waiting list currently right now. An officer does not have shelter to offer, and we would be violating the Pottinger Agreement, and we would not be allowed to engage. And that's very important for everyone to understand. On June 30th, the County Commission is going to hear a resolution to refund this program. Now, this program was envisioned by our city commissioners, led by Commissioner Mark Sarnoff, with support from the CRA Omni, the CRA Park West, the DDA, and other sources. But that funding is ending July 28th. The Homeless Trust, as you heard, which has a $57.7 million budget, has not spent one penny to fund this program. And it's very important that each one of you would come out on June 30th and speak up to the county commissioners and support the program. Because without this program, we cannot engage and help the homeless and help the community. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Gisson. I'm Vice President of the Boulevard Neighborhood Association, as well as President of Paramount Bay. And I've lived in this community for a long time. And I've had to deal with the homeless in many different respects during those many years. How many of you all are affected by the homeless in some way? Let me see a show of hands. How many of you think that the homeless are going to leave Miami because of our weather, because of our number of tourists that come down here, and the availability to live under the decision made by the federal court in the middle 1980s, which supports them significantly? The homeless are not going to go away. They're just not leaving. And they create a significant problem for the folks in my condominium, because when they go outside, they're sitting on the benches right in front of the building. They go into Margaret Pace Park, they're in the park, and you go downtown, they're affecting the business community downtown. They're an effect on everybody. Now, we just can't send them, give them bus tickets and send them to Miami Beach because they have their own programs and their own situation over there. They send them over here. Well, it's not uncommon for some northern cities to deal with their problem by giving bus tickets down to Miami, and then we inherit the problem. So I, for one, feel that anything we can do to deal with the homeless, who are human beings just like you and I, some of them suffering from drug addiction, some of them suffering from mental illness, and a large percentage of them on the street have diabetes and intended with those issues, and a lot of them access their health care in the emergency room in the hospitals, which you and I pay for. Now, I'd much rather pay for a MAT program at Camilla's house to get 115 homeless people off the streets for that night, the next night, with an opportunity to engage them in a continuum of care, which eventually results in them getting permanent housing and not homeless anymore. How many of you would believe that 20% of the homeless are college graduates? Yeah, very true. So the situation is such that, and I've been in the behavioral health field for 40 years, dealing with many of the homeless who have the behavioral health problems. And they're not bad people. They're people that need help. They need our help. And I just hope that you can support what I support, and that is any program we could do for the homeless. I wish I could tell you I know of a magic bullet to end homelessness. I wish I could tell you I could end addiction. I've been treating addiction and mental health for 45 years, and I haven't yet come up with a solution on that. But we're still trying, and I think that we can reduce the population on the street, reduce the problems that they bring to the street and to the community, and more specifically, to my home at Paramount Bay. I just don't want to open the side door ever again and have it barred. I couldn't open it, and then when I finally got open, I found a homeless lady squatting with her bloomers off, defecating at the doorway. And, you know, that's just unacceptable for me and for you and our quality of life here in Miami. So the county commission is going to hear this one program, and whenever you can just reach out and help the agencies that are dealing with this problem would be a great thing. And I request you to do that sincerely. And thank you very much.
There's something very clear after going to these meetings and hear that the funding for this program is going to run out on July 1st. And the Homeless Trust, it has a budget of $57.7 million a year. And my question was, are they spending all that money every year? No, they're not. So why aren't they funding this program that could take off the streets 115 people, because there is shelter for them that there won't be if they don't fund it for another year? And there is a question for the commissioner here. He's going to have to answer himself.
You want me to?
Sure.
So I guess 20 years ago it was quite a different place here because there weren't so many people living here. And we pretty much had the homeless that we have because we had the good fortune of having the weather we had. So in 1998, the city of Miami got in trouble, probably long before a lot of you lived here, and they entered in what's called the Pottinger Agreement. Pottinger really means that there are a set of circumstances under which police officers cannot engage the homeless people. And those circumstances are when they're conducting life-sustaining activities, which for me and you is almost everything they do. So as we started to create an urban environment, which is certainly Edgewater, which is certainly downtown, there's a collision between the homeless and those that wish to be free of the homeless. So there are, in the entire city of Miami, 650 homeless people. For you, there are 350 that call downtown home. Of the 350 people, 340 of them are what we call chronic homeless. And that means they've been homeless for a very, very long time. We don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution for them. And matter of fact, what the Homeless Trust has been doing is what's called Housing First. Housing First means, sir, are you homeless? Yes. Give me some information. Here's the key to an apartment. We don't think a lot of those 350 people you could simply hand a key to and they would even know what to do with it. Most of them will tell you, as Judge Leifman puts it, most of them are having what's called a heart attack of the brain. They are literally not capable of giving a good answer, a good solution to their problem. So we devised a program with Camilla's House where we take 115 people, so 105 come from the MAT program and 10 go to what's called emergency shelter. Under the modified terms of the Pottinger Agreement, something we just modified this April with Judge Moreno, who did a great job, by the way. Under the modified terms, we can give these people shelter. Ironically, let me throw it in one more time. Ironically, we cannot force any of them to a program. We can't force them to take a shower. We can't give them medical care. We can't give them dental care. We can't give them social work. We can't get them their disability check. We can't force them to do it, but guess what we give them the opportunity for? All the above. As a matter of fact, in this program, they even get to have shelter for their dogs, so we have a kennel. They even have dental if they say okay. They'll even, as the Brothers of the Good Shepherd put it, wash their feet, so that they finally begin to understand the modicum of care, or like I like to call it, a hybrid approach for a person who has spent 2-3 years on the street is now ready to start accepting care from people who have cared nothing for them. Because let's face it, we really don't think about the homeless very often until they cross our paths. And we're not all that affectionate to them because we're all busy people. So I tell everybody is let's put ourselves in their shoes for one moment, and some of them don't have shoes. What we literally need to do is try, as the Brothers of Good Shepherd say, to be them for a moment and bring them into this hybrid approach. So we have taken approximately 9,000 people who've gone through this modem of care for about 1 year. We're not quite a year into it, but about 1 year. We have about a 37% success rate. Not killer, but not bad. That means more than a third of the people are coming out with a good outcome. So it's imperative that the Homeless Trust realize housing first is not the solution for the chronic homeless. That you simply can't hand a key to somebody and say, here, you're no longer homeless. So if you can go to the, BCC always means Broward County Commission. It's the county commission. If you can go to the county commission, the one with the big tall building right over there, on June 30th at 9 o'clock, we're all going to be there. And we're all going to try and say to the folks up there, you have a $9 billion budget, because the county commission does have a $9 billion budget. The Homeless Trust has a $57.7 million budget. We've been cobbling together $750,000 for the year. We're not the agency that taxes you, because every time you're in a City of Miami restaurant, you pay food and beverage, right? If you don't know what you do. So you actually pay that food and beverage tax, and it goes to the Homeless Trust. Now, when you're on Miami Beach, you don't pay that tax. When you're in Surfside, you don't pay that tax. There's one other jurisdiction you don't pay that tax either. Everybody puts their homeless in Miami. There are approximately 1,400 people a year released from various hospitals in our area that literally the next day are homeless. Matter of fact, Officer Burnett took a homeless person who just had a pacemaker put in and his broken left arm set. And Jackson Memorial Hospital said, "Thank you, have a nice day." There was no homeless bed for them. But Officer Burnett found him and gave him a shelter. And that shelter was a City of Miami shelter. He'll be there and he'll tell his story. I know elected officials come to you oftentimes and say, support this, support that. You're in a unique spot. You're on the front lines of homeless. Like it or not, you're pioneers. And in that pioneer spirit, you need to see it two ways. Your quality of life, which is important to you, but equally, their life, which is important to them. So I implore each and every one of you to go to the county commission and say, one of you is a $9 billion corporation, the other is a $57.7 million corporation. I'm sure you can find $750,000 in a rounding error to help this program. That's the extent of it.
I have a question. When you say there's a 37% success rate on the program, how do you guys quantify that result?
We do it the same way the Homeless Trust does it. I don't know if it's genuine or not genuine. They have a better outcome than being on the street. So they go into what they call the continuum of care. Remember I told you, I may have a shower, but I can't force you to take it. I may have a social worker, but I can't force you to talk to her or him. I have a kennel, but I can't force you to put your dog in there. Simply put, we know what a success is? You allow us to service you. And the outcome becomes a longer-term prospect. I know you want to hear, and we have 3 of these. You want to hear somebody went back to New York to their family. It happened. You want to hear that somebody went out and got a job. The DDA, Downtown Development Authority, actually hires 14 of them who were at one time homeless. They're now in what's called the DEAD program. And then there was another outcome which was pretty cool. A person went back to Europe after spending 3 years in the street here in Miami, was reunited with his family from Sweden. Those are the stories you want to hear. I don't want to kid you that those are the ordinary outcomes, but there are some outcomes like that. The answer to your question is, the way we measure success, your head is on a pillow, it's not on brick.
I have a question. Even the homeless don't bother me as much as the trash that the city does not clean up. Ton of clothes. Right there where I walked my dog next to my building, it's filthy. I talked to one of the guys who is in charge of coding violations, and so what are these people that own this property and there's litter everywhere and they're supposed to clean it up? They don't care about their code violations, they just pay them and the hell with it? I don't get it, because there was a shopping cart right there at Quantum on 19th Street for 1 month. People were putting bottles and trash in it. I had to go to my building and ask them, because it didn't wheel, or I would have moved it, to please remove it, because the city's not doing it. It's a month already. So the code violator explained to me that this property that we see fenced off and surrounded by litter is responsible for the sidewalk and right into the middle of the street. So this is my answer. I have to live like this. I pay a lot of taxes. I'm not happy. And what about the dangerous homes? What about the sex offenders that can't rent anything? They no one will rent to them, so I have to live with them. And all these kids in the park have to live with them. And then the bay, it says no swimming. They're in there at 9 o'clock in the morning bathing, which I don't care about, as long as they don't walk around naked, because there's a lot of kids out there. So what about all those homeless?
Well,
You can't do anything about it. If you go into the trees all along 36th Street Causeway and the Venetian Causeway, there's a guy who's been living there. He's got it all set up. They're everywhere, and you can't do anything about it. And all this money, they can't build sufficient shelters for these people. It's horrible. I don't know where all that money goes. I can imagine, but I can't say.
Well,
It's not going for them.
We heard your question.
So the answer to your question for your particular garbage, call my office 305-250.
I have called your office and I talked to
Who'd you speak to?
I sent emails.
Who'd you speak to?
Oh, what's his name?
Ron?
I think so.
He's right behind you.
Did I talk to you?
All right. I got you. We'll take care of your garbage.
But there's nothing that can be done.
Yeah, you had a question about sex offenders. Sex offenders cannot be by parks. Sex offenders are no longer covered by the Pottinger settlement as a result of the April 2015 modification. So sex offenders can no longer be in parks, and they can no longer have the same protection afforded the other Pottingers.
So you can't do anything
No, we
about
can.
it. If you can't,
We can.
you can't just.
If you can tell me that person's a registered sex offender, they do not get the Pottinger protection.
But how do you
We're
tell
going
the
to
difference?
cut the dialogue. It's not going to be a dialogue anymore. Thank you very much. We have a lot more to cover. There's one thing only to wrap it up, and is that June 30th, the Board of Commissioners can decide of extending the funding of this program, and the Homeless Trust that has the money and doesn't want to spend it in this program will have to follow what the commissioners decide. So it is up to you to tell the commissioners that they have to give direction to the fund trust. They have the money and they have to spend it. So we're gonna go now to what a lot of people were waiting for, is an update on the park.
Thank you, Mr. President. For those of you who don't know, I'm Peter Bachweg. I'm the Executive Director of the Omni and Patel CRA. And I know that they're saving the best for last, because all we wanted to hear was about dogs and the dog park. So, as you know, we have visited the Executive Committee now. I've visited the Executive Committee now twice. I came to you a couple months ago to get your input and see exactly what your concerns were along with the Executive Committee, and this is what we came up with. Just to point out, the plans that you see in front of you are signed and sealed. That means we can literally start construction, well, to put in the plans to the building department tomorrow. So we are ready to go full-fledged, and it should take about 60 to 90 days to complete the park. What you see in front of you is an area about 21,000 square feet. It's got a 14,600 square foot large dog area and a 4,600 small dog area, fenced in. So the big dogs will not be playing with the little dogs. They have their own entrances, so they will not be fighting with each other. Along with that, you have 8 brand new shade trees. You will have 8 benches. You will have hills, elevation changes. And of course, in the sense of a dog, you need fire hydrants, so there are also fire hydrants in the dog park. Sorry? And treat? Yeah. Now, along with that, you also have water fountain, not only for the adults, but also for the dogs, that will be installed as well. And The grass is where, right in front of the commissioner, is the type of grass we'll be using. We'll be using synthetic grass. Yes, it is true that the initial cost is a little higher than regular sod, but from a maintenance standpoint and long-term durability, it is the way to go. And most importantly, for all of you to know, from a health reason, it is the way to go because it drains and it can be picked up more easily, so you will not be walking in the feces and whatnot. But I would like to point out something before we go on that I said to you a couple months ago when I came here at first. So I don't want you all to have an idea that this park is going to be the solution to your problems. As you know, we've been at this now for 2 years, doing an educational program with the residents, meeting with the homeowner associations, the neighborhood associations, putting out flyers, putting out information, having the cops come out and give warnings. Ultimately, that turned into tickets under the county ordinance. So we've been at this now for 2 years. And the problem, as you all know, it wasn't so much the feces, the poop and the pee, whatever, but it was more so letting the dogs run loose. The leash law was the biggest issue. So now you have a place to take your dogs off a leash. But please remember that this is not the silver bullet. It is still upon all of you to follow the rules and the guidelines set by the county ordinance to make sure you do pick up your feces and you do have your dog leashed when you're outside of the play area. It will be fenced in. You will have nice benches. Nobody will be able to lay on the benches. We just stopped talking about the homeless issue. So there'll be armrests so nobody can lay on there. And they'll have shade trees with benches under the trees and whatnot. So again, I just want to, this is not the silver bullet, but we are very happy to add this addition to your park because I think it's a worthwhile cause. I think it's an important cause. And at the direction, and I know that the commission was vital in getting that done in Kennedy Park and wanted to make sure we do something similar here. And we listened to you. So before you is what it will look like. And I will take any questions that you may have. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe the signage could be improved when the dog park is there because it is really a little vague right now in terms of there's really not a sign that says dog must be leashed.
Actually, there are signs throughout the park.
Well, no, I'm real familiar with them. I mean, they say you have to follow the ordinance to pick up. There's not really a good dog leash sign.
Well,
so maybe when this all gets done, that could be revisited. So
I will make sure I reach out to the Parks Department and make sure we address that. But I know that there are. I'm pretty confident after 2.5 years, there's not one person in this area that does not realize they have to leash the dog. But you're right. There are visitors. People come, they move, they go. So we will make sure we add more signs that there currently are.
Right, because if you do say something to someone in the park, sometimes you do get reprimanded.
Yes, I know.
So.
I know.
Signs would be good.
Yes, sir.
What's the location in that park? Called the north end, the middle?
It's in the middle. It is right. It is the. If you know, and there's a small map here.
The basketball court.
No, it's over by where the outdoor exercise equipment is, and it's half of that area. So you have that big park, which is about over an acre. We're taking up 21,000 square feet of that, and we're taking half of that property that's closest to North Bay Shore Drive. Okay, not the one closer to the water, because I think, remember, they are dogs, but I think all of you as residents want to make sure you enjoy the waterfront and sit there and enjoy that. So it's the half close to North Bay Shore Drive. Yes, sir.
This is artificial turf. How is this cleaned?
It will be cleaned through the irrigation. There is current irrigation in the park, so maintenance of it is minimal. However, the sprinkler systems, when the sprinkler will drain, it's drainable, it goes down, and it gets cleaned through that. And of course, everybody here, you need to pick up the waste that your dog does.
The people are supposed to pick up the waste, and most people do, but there's still some residual. And how often is that cleaned? How is that kept sanitary?
There is a maintenance schedule. The Parks Department is very familiar with how they do that as it relates to other parks that have this type of grass. So that will be part of the ongoing maintenance. Anybody else? Yes.
What is the cost?
It's just under $400,000.
And the commissioners passed that?
It was money that was part of my budget when the budget was approved in March.
We got almost $500,000 for that, and we have a total funding $700,000 for human beings?
I can assure you that the CRA itself has contributed significantly, not only to the homeless and the homeless issues that occur within the Omni boundary. I am guided by a state statute that I can only pay or spend money within the boundary of the CRA. So I can assure you that the money that we have contributed as part of my budget has gone towards addressing that homeless issue.
We're going to take the last question.
So that's that's $400,000 of CRA money?
That's correct.
Okay.
How are you going to control that the dog owners use the park? How are you going to control that the dog owners use the fenced area of the park?
Well, again, and that's why I started with what I'm saying. This is not the silver bullet. It's still upon all of you to make sure you follow the guidelines and the rules that are set in place. As you all know, we have a CRA police, and the CRA police is active in this area as well. And there have been people that have been ticketed $50 for walking without a leash. It will be clearly designated that that is a dog park. And I do expect some people to use a little bit of common sense that they see a fenced-in area where dogs are playing, that's where they go and play with the dog. I would like to...
Very important. Why did you decide the middle court and not the north court, right?
Well,
people made significant investments to their property at the 1800 because there was no dog park in front of them, right? Because it was the north park. And now you move it from the north side to the middle side. So now the people that live in the 1800 would have a dog park in front of them instead of the north side. So,
okay, and if
what was the decision behind that?
And
I would like to bring it North Texas Drive.
I'm assuming you live in 1800 Club.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah, but I made an investment knowing that there was no park there, right? The people that live on the north side, they knew that there was a dog park because there's like signs everywhere on the park, go to the north side. So when I made an investment in the area, I made sure that there was no dogs in front of them.
You're going to head to us, 1800, to be part of the Bna.
Yeah, but
you haven't been, and you should be.
You make me close to the north face of the drive, right? Which makes the noise from the dogs barking in front of our ears.
Okay, well, the dog, I don't know.
I don't understand why you decided that, right?
You brought up a lot of points, but let me kind of work my way backwards real quick. I'm not sure your work hours, but the park is closed during nighttime, so there will be no dogs barking there at night. So, I'm not sure when you work.
Well, I live in the building, right?
No, but during the day, I'm assuming you work.
Yeah, but I made an investment knowing there was no park there.
I adjust. So, when you bought, and that goes for all of you here, right? You bought your investment based on the beautiful park that is in front of you, and as investors and homeowners, you look for government to provide additional amenities for the needs of the area, right? Which is exactly what we at the CRA have done at the direction of the board. We have included outdoor gymnasium. Why? The residents want that. That's an additional amenity for the benefit of the community. The dogs is an issue. That is an additional benefit. I think, as a community as a whole, it is much more beneficial to have a designated dog run to benefit than to have the dogs run loose everywhere else. On top of that, as a homeowner and all of you that live in the area, you have currently the largest part of that park is designated for the dogs. If I were you, I would be furious about that. Because you, as residents, are not allowed to, or capable, or able to play frisbee, play soccer, play football, lie in the grass, and whatnot. Why? Because of all the dogs running loose and the feces. Literally, the largest part of that park of free space is designated as the dog park. So we wanted to give that back to the residents to enjoy for their activities and outdoor activities, and put it in the middle where you have the other amenities in the park, that is mostly the logic behind what we do. I want to make one clarification that, and Michael, oh no, there he is, Commissioner, sorry. The Omni and Midtown CRA holds every single one of their meetings at City Hall during City Commission. So every one of my meetings are televised at City Commission during that day. I just want to make that clarification because you said that they're not televised and they're not at City Hall. So
some of them last all 2 minutes.
And some of them are very efficient and effective in getting the job done. Thank you for pointing that out.
That's right. They waste no time. They don't even read the ordinances.